In this video, I'll demonstrate stay stitching, stitch in the ditch, and edge stitching. Stay stitching. Stay stitching is placed or made on areas of the garment that are curved. The stay stitching is permanent and is stitched within the seam allowances. It is not seen from the outside of the garment. The purpose of stay stitching is to stabilize the curved areas. Because they are actually cut on bias, stay stitching minimizes stretching of the fabric. For stay stitching, you basically start at the edge of the fabric within the seam allowance, and it's a regular stitch length, no need to back stitch. And there you have stay stitching. You will see this on necklines, waistlines, sometimes on armholes. Stitch in the ditch. Stitch in the ditch technique is used to apply collars, bands, collar bands, or neck bands, or waist bands, or cuffs to the garment. The stitch in the ditch method, you sew your band or your collar or waistband onto your garment. Make sure you clip around any curves to release tension. You fold under the free side of the band or the collar, and then you fold it back from the wrong side. Fold that back, covering the stitch line that you created when you attach the band or collar to the garment. And you want to pin on the stitch line. We'll place our pins. So you cover the stitch line, and then you place your pins right on that stitch line. So my pin is on the stitch line, and I'm going to get it a little bit closer. There we go. So place your pins. Make sure that when you turn your band back, you've got an area of the band that covers the stitch line. Then you place your pin in, and your pin should be right at that stitch line on the right side. That will be our stitch line for the stitch in the ditch. That is the ditch. So I'm going to continue pinning all the way around the neckband. Since stitching in the ditch is going to be done from the right side of the garment and right in the ditch where the band meets the garment, I've actually reversed those pins so that I could see exactly where I'm stitching. Now at this point, you do want to recheck again just to make sure that your band is covering the stitch line created when you stitch the band to the garment. And you will use these pins as your stitching guideline, stitching right in between the band and the garment. I've gone ahead and pressed this so that it's nice and flat prior to stitching. And we'll go ahead and stitch now. Using a regular stitch or a short stitch, I'm using my default 2.5 stitch. I lower my needle right into the fabric, right in the ditch, and that's the line between the band and the garment. And you see my needle is right underneath in that groove, this line here. So to keep track of where that is, I have my needle centered where my presser foot is, and it's right in the middle. The key to this is do not watch the needle, but watch the groove, the middle groove of your foot, and that's how you keep track of the stitch line. Now, as you start stitching, you want to keep your fingers pulling apart both pieces, the garment and the band. And you can go as fast or slow as you need to go. The stitch in the ditch should not show from the right side of the garment. Do not sew over any pins. Remove those as you come to them. There's the stitch in the ditch, which you cannot see. This is very popular on ready-to-wear clothing, on waistbands and collars. And then if you go to the back side, you can see that it is overlapped. The band overlaps the stitching where we attach the band to the garment. Now for edge stitching. Edge stitching is done on the edge, very close, and again using the center groove of my foot. That's how I keep track of the needle. And there's my edge stitching.